Hello and welcome to part 2 of my video about how I put together the topper for this card. So in the previous video I showed how to do the foiling. The foiling plate I've used is this beautiful Pretty Peonies foiling plate. It's a Crafter's Companion Gemini foil press foil stamp they call it. The detail on it is amazing. Really cleverly done, gorgeous design. So I've done the foiling already, so if you're thinking, well, how she got to that, watch part 1. Okay, so I've got a large piece that's going to be my background, and this one I've done on navy blue card, in case you're thinking the colour on the camera's gone funny. I'm just going to point the camera up slightly. That's it. Okay, that's better. So this one I've done on navy blue card, and this one I've done on black card, and I've used some different dyes because I wanted to kind of make it do things that I thought everybody would probably have. So I've used just some very basic frame cutting dies. Okay, so the one thing you'll notice is that the cutting edge is can I get it to focus? No, I can't. Bring it out again. Bring it in. The cutting edge is in the middle of the supporting rail at the back, and that works best. It's not too thick either. And then for the oval, again, plain oval cutting die. If you've got nice fancy shapes, you can use those. I've used hearts, I've used decorative ovals, squares and circles, scalloped, whatever you've got you can try this with. Okay, so part 1 was the foiling, so I've got my pieces here. I've also kept the scrap from both pieces of foiling to try out my colours on. Okay, so that's what those are for. So I'm going to put these to one side for a minute. And first of all, show you what I used. Okay, so I have got here, I bought some time ago, I'll just point the camera down a bit. There we are. And I bought them on eBay. I'm in the UK, and the seller I bought them from is Bits and Bobs for Crafters. I'm sure they won't mind me saying who they are. And I bought a set of craft mica powders. Now these are mica powder with pigment and a fixing agent in them, so that you put them on like a watercolour, and when they dry they stay put. Okay, you can reactivate them again with water, but they won't just rub off. So that's the difference between the craft mica powders and cosmetic ones. Cosmetic ones, you can paint it on, looks great, when it dries it will just rub straight off the card. So I've got those, and they're in pots, and when you open the pots, if you're not careful, it goes everywhere. So rather than keep working from the pots, what I've got is a watercolour mixing palette. So I've got a bit of powder in each lot, and it's been mixed with water, and then it gets left to dry out again, and they just stay there, and I just keep reusing them. So I can put the powders away, and if I've run out of one, I just replenish it from the pot. Okay, so these ones are great. They seem to have lots of colour in them, and I use them with a water brush. I'm going to need to go and fill up my water brush. Bear with me a moment. Sorry about that, I just picked it up and thought, no, that is too much empty. So I just got a small water brush. I don't even say what brand it is. Derwent Art is the brand on it. Can't remember where I bought it from, but it's a small water brush. It's quite a low flow of water, so I usually have to squeeze it to get the water to come down. So you might need to use a normal paintbrush and just blot some water off it, or if you're using a water brush, have some tissue to hand to blot it if you need to. Okay, and then it's just a case of, you know, you mix it with the watercolour. If I just put this in here and show this to the camera, that just reactivates. And then if I get some black card, it has quite a lot of colour on the card. Okay, and if you're working on white card, you know, colour with whatever you normally colour with, but on black card you're a bit limited, so good quality mica colours seem to work quite well. The other thing I tried was some coloured pencils. So somewhere here, bear with me, on that piece, on that piece. Okay, so I earlier I was trying out some alternatives. So coloured pencils, they're watercolour pencil, and the ones I've got are Derwent ones, but they're their cheaper range, probably intended more for children to use rather than professional artists. So, but they've kept their colour quite well on the dark. You know, it's got a leaf and a bit of flower there. I did try some gel pens, and that was limited in success because you didn't get a lot of colour. But yeah, I've tried a few things. I've got some other watercolours as well. Now I'm in the UK. I bought these in Hobbycraft. It was only £7 for the whole thing. But these I find haven't got as much colour in them. So let me get some black card. So if I, for example, take this nice strong, what looks like a nice strong pink. Actually, make sure my water brush is clean first. But there's, when you actually use it, there's hardly any colour in it. So it's worth trying out whatever you're going to use on some scraps of your card before you use it. Now let me just find my watercolour pencils as well. Pink and some greens. So I've got a few colours here. Let me move this out of the way. So the reason I did this on dark card was because I wanted the darkness of the space between the flowers. So I can, if I use the pencils, I can go in. This isn't watercolour card, obviously, it's black card. So the colour doesn't move much on them when you apply water, but I did still put some water on. Okay, I'm just literally just scribbling this colour on. And then I am going to use my water brush, which I've put down, there we are, just to kind of activate the colour, and it'll, you know, any little bits I've missed, make sure I've not got any of that paint still in it. So any tiny bits I've missed, the colour will wash into. say it, when you first do it, you look like you're covering up the foil. Can I get that to go there? There we go. But as it dries, the water evaporates off the foil and the foil becomes clearly visible again. So I'm going to let that dry on there. So that was done with the pencil. And then my oval, I'm going to colour in with my paints. So I think people actually want to see that happen. So I'm just got the oval here and my water brush. Make sure that's open properly. Okay, so give myself some space. Make sure you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to put my paints this side and my card that side, and maybe I need to move the camera in and just point it down a bit more. And get some lighting. Bear with me. Okay, I think that's the best I can do to get sort out the lighting. I'll have to keep picking it up and showing it to the camera. So I'm going to use that purple colour I showed you earlier, and I'm just using my water brush to activate it. Make sure I've got plenty of colour on the water brush. Don't want too much water. There we are. And then I'm just going to start putting that over the centre of my flower. Let me go. Sure I've got plenty of colour rather than water. You can go over again if you need to. And you don't have to worry about the foil except when you get to the very edge of the flower. So whilst it looks like it's a really dark pink in the palette, because it's on black card, you lose an awful lot of that colour. It just becomes very muted. Okay, Cosmic Shimmer do a palette of mica watercolours. And I imagine they are quite good quality and have a lot of colour, a lot of mica in them. Although I don't have them to try. So obviously this is a water brush, so it will gradually, as I'm using it, it'll water down the colour I'm using. So as soon as it starts looking like there's not much colour in it, I go back and reload my brush from the palette. And then if I want to make the centre a bit darker, just clean that out. Just blotting it on some tissue paper. What you can see there, let me bring that into shot. I'm just going to the darker colour I've got, activating that. And if you're not sure how it's going to come out, grab a piece of your scrap and just try it out. Yeah, so you can see what it looks like. I'm going to put some of this darker colour in the centre of the flower I've already been. Nope, I haven't got enough of that colour. That's going to give me a slightly different tone in the middle of the flower. And then if I want it lighter at the edge, get that colour out my brush. Sometimes I find it best to actually put some water on my glass mat from the brush, kind of swirl it about in it and then wipe it on the tissue. That seems to clear the colour from the brush quite well. I've got some white mica watercolour here, so that's a really useful kind of option to have, is the white, because then I can go over my outer leaves or petals with some white and just lighten the shade. It's going over the top, too much on there. You can just go backwards and forwards between them and blend your colours however you want. And then some highlights and low lights, and it's you know, it's like colouring a stamp. It's but you've stamped it with foil. So I've got a bit more of the pink back in. Okay, so that's one flower done. And then you just work on and work your way through the others. Okay, I'm gonna just bring back the one I was starting to do in pencil and leave that to dry for a moment or two. And the place I'm putting them to dry is on top of my closed go press, which is still nice and warm, and it just provides a nice gentle heat to dry this. I'm going to get some clean kitchen paper, if I can figure out what I've done with it. Okay, and then I'm just going to just put the lid on my brush. I'm just going to close my palette. So, hold that up to the camera. Try and get it to focus on it. There we are. So, try and get some light on there as well. There we are. So, the water that was there has pretty much just evaporated off the foil. Just to make sure, once it's dry, you can just give it a wipe over with some kitchen paper and the excess colour will come off the foil. And you kind of polish it back up. There we are. It's not focused. That's better. Okay. And you'll find the same with this. So this is starting to dry, but it's not dry enough to buff yet. So the foil has kind of disappeared into the water a bit. But once it's dry, then I can give it a buff. It will come straight back. Okay. So I'm going to finish off the colouring on that and then dry it, and then I can show you at the end exactly how it looks when I buff it. Okay, so I finished painting this. Let me put the camera up a bit. There we are. Right. So I've finished off painting this. Okay, so upside down. So this bit at the top I've already buffed, and I just need to buff up the other areas. And you can see that compared to when it was wet, the foiling has come back and is shining through. It shines through more once you buff it. So let me do that. Clean piece of kitchen paper. And there we are. So that can be used with my uncoloured background. Now, some of these areas are really tiny, and even though I had a really fine point brush, 1 or 2 bits of paint went in where I didn't want them. Now, I don't think if anybody who doesn't know about those, then they're not really going to notice them. But if you do end up with the odd spot where it really shouldn't be, just think of it as marking where the butterfly goes. Okay, because I would use that as a background, put that up on some foam pads, maybe a sentiment, butterflies, and make that up into a card. Okay, thank you for watching.